Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Unlocked Show. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you guys this morning. You've probably read the caption of this morning's show, all about webinars. And if you're somebody who's been thinking about doing a webinar, looked at what it takes to put one of these together and thought, gosh, I'm just going to give this a go. I'm going to start putting my own webinar together. Or maybe you've got one and maybe it stopped working. So what I want to tell you today is that you're in real luck today, because I've got somebody amazing to bring to the show who is going to share with you his experience on webinars. Tom Poland is a multiple best-selling author specializing in the generation of high quality leads, and in particular utilizing webinars to do so. He's been a professional in 151 countries, or he helps people in those 151 countries generate leads all around the world. And he's started and he's sold numerous businesses over his long career of 39 years. And he's also led teams of up to 100 people, generating over to $20 million in revenue. So if that doesn't kind of get you guys thinking about, gosh, I should sit up, listen, and take note to what Tom has to say today, I don't know what is going to. And if you've also been sort of sitting back thinking, well, don't know about webinars, I'm not sure where you've been either. Maybe you've been kind of hiding under a rock or in the forest where Tom is. He currently lives on the Sunshine Coast. And the reason I said he's in a forest is because I want you guys to know that from time to time, hopefully we won't have any issues with audio or with internet connection, because he does live somewhere that doesn't get fantastic internet connection. So we're going to have our fingers crossed. But we're going to answer all things to do with webinars. Do they still actually work today? So welcome to the show, Tom. It's fantastic to have you here.
G'day, Tracy. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, you're most welcome. And it's great to have somebody who's actually just up the road from me. Normally I'm talking to people, that are, on the other side of the globe. So it's nice to have someone that's just up the road. So let's kind of get into, you've had a very long career in business, and starting, growing, selling multiple businesses over time. And, webinars are just one, in the grand scheme of things in the business space, are one small component of what makes up, the success of a business, particularly in the online space. So how did you actually get into this? Because now you've written multiple books on this particular subject.
All right. Well, it was an evolutionary process. Way back when, 40 plus years ago, I was a management consultant, and I started my own business at age 24, which was a pretty bad idea, because I had kids, I had mortgages, and I thought, bugger it, I'm going to start my own business. Then it was really tough. So as a general management consultant, as a 24-year-old, people don't really perceive that you've got a hell of a lot to offer. And I used to wake up every Monday morning feeling unemployed and scared and anxious about the future, because I didn't know where my next client was coming from. So it really didn't take long to figure out that if I sucked at marketing, I didn't have any opportunity to offer my expertise to anyone. So to me, it became clear very early on that marketing, or lead generation specifically, as opposed to, say, brand style marketing, lead generation, where you have a qualified prospect, meaning they have the money to pay you, the timing is good for them to start, and 3, they're aware of the need for what you've got. Having qualified prospects make inquiries was the pointiest end of the business, and I had to sort that out real quick. I read a lot of books, went to a lot of seminars, traveled around the world, sat at the feet of marketing masters. Every time I read a book, did a seminar, came back from a conference, I'd implement like crazy, and nothing changed. Was I learning stuff? Absolutely. But it took me far too long to figure out that marketing services and advice was a very different style of marketing to marketing something physical. And this, in and of itself, on its own, explains why a lot of people get frustrated with marketing, because they're trying to do, for example, advertising, radio ads, billboards, perhaps, sales signs, whatever they're trying to do, which work really well if you've got a set of golf clubs, or a car, or even a plane, or something like that. But when you're marketing services, there is a significant difference, and the absence of this, the acknowledgement of this difference is dooms most marketing efforts to defeat. And the difference is this, that if you've got advice or a service or even software, chances are you're proposing that a prospect enters into a long-term relationship with you. And so marketing the invisible is far closer to, say, proposing marriage than it is, selling a washing machine. And if you want to get into a long-term relationship with someone personally, it's probably a good idea to have a first date, right? To dip the toe in the water for both parties to see if this is a good idea or not. So I wasted a lot of money on advertising and traditional marketing until I discovered this. And when I discovered it, I started running events. And I'm old enough to predate the internet. And so we would buy a mail list. We would direct mail 10,000 business owners. We would give them free tickets to an event, and we'd pack them into a conference center. And I'd strap my stuff for a couple of hours, hand out feedback forms, and people would tick a box and say, hey, I kind of like the sound of this. Maybe we should talk about doing business. That was the mechanism through which we did lead generation. And certainly in over 30 years of doing that style of marketing, I haven't found anything that's better than presenting to a group of people. And there's a few boxes that are ticked when we do that. First of all, it gives people that first date that they need before we propose. In this case, it's not a proposal of marriage, of course, it's a proposal that we should meet and talk about whether we have a fit between the prospect's needs and our services. So that's the first box that gets ticked. The second big box that gets ticked is that provided you get the title of the event right, and this applies whether it's an offline event or an online event, provided you get the title right, you attract the right people to the event. The third box it ticks, and otherwise we're wasting a lot of money talking to people that don't have an interest in our specialty. The third box it ticks is scalability. So we're now talking not a networking meeting to one person perhaps, or a conference to one person, or a trade show. We're speaking to a group of people. And so there's a lot of boxes that get ticked when you as a consultant or an advisor or a coach speak to a group of people. And a lot of people know that, but so it might be common knowledge. It might not be a revelation, but there's a lot of roadblocks in making that a reality. How do you get the audience? What should the title say in order to get cut through and motivate people to actually give up their time, whether it's a webinar or a physical event, to come and attend? What's the call to action? So all of these questions have to be answered before you run your event or your webinar to have any degree of confidence that it's likely to be successful. So there's a potential to unpack a lot of things there, Tracy.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, somebody who, like you, who've been, in business for quite some time, and you were doing that one-to-many type scenario with speaking to people, in person from a stage, doing a conference, and then transitioning that over time into the online space, and realizing that that is the fastest way to be able to get to create an audience of people that may potentially be interested in what you've got to talk about, and then find a few of those people within that audience who actually are interested in taking that next step. So when you're talking about specifically webinars together, because you've been doing this for quite some time, what are some of the changes that you've seen, say in the last 3 years, from an online perspective? Has there been a significant change in the way in which webinars are being done these days compared to, say, 2 or 3 years ago?
It's a really great question, and a lot of people will give you a lot of different answers about that. Any answer, in order to be valid, any answer has to be based on the measurement of significant number of statistics. So I have a business manager who measures every number that's possible to measure. He's a data scientist in Florida, and Mike is a genius at maths. So we track, every partner who promotes one of our webinars, we know how many visits they had to the registration page, how many opt-in registrations, how many attendees, how many people reached out to book time to talk about becoming a client, and so on. So we track those numbers ever since 2008, since we started. And there have not been any significant changes over the last 3 years. Ever since I started doing webinars, well, let's say from perhaps 2010 onwards, I've heard people say the numbers are falling. People's attention span is not as long as it used to be. Webinars don't convert like they used to. Mostly, my belief is that those conclusions are based on insufficient amount of data. They're not statistically significant. Someone runs an event or 2 or 3 even, and it has poor results. So, webinars are history. Because we keep the numbers, and because we've got tens of thousands of numbers, if you like, for every single part of what I call the critical path, the visits, the registrations, the attendees, and so on, I can tell you that none of the ratios have changed in the last 3 years.
And that's really interesting, to know and have that backed by some significant data, and the fact that you've been keeping this information for such a long time, because that is, like you, also, I've been hearing webinars don't work. People don't have that amount of time these days, and you've got other things competing with people's attention, in sort of the likes of TikTok, where they're very short bursts of information. But also on the flip side of that is, if somebody really wants to know, and I think this, and we'll get back to this, because I think this comes back to understanding your audience and the title, which we'll delve into. But, those that want to know the subject matter that you're about to speak about on a webinar, they will be prepared to invest their time. So when you look at it from that perspective, the prospect is much more, is a better quality, right? It's quality over quantity.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Tracy. It's most people, when they experience a failure, want to blame something external. The marketplace has changed. The government stuffed it up. Consumers are all screwed up. TikTok's destroying the market, or whatever. But almost inevitably, it's operator error. Almost inevitably, the person has not crafted a title which genuinely gets cut through or motivates people to want to know more, and or the presentation lacks punch, or it lacks engagement, or it lacks value. So marketing is at its highest level is very simple. You intersect a prospect with an offer that they find appealing. Now, when you unpack that, sure, there's a fair bit to it. But it doesn't really matter whether it's a webinar or a physical event. As you've said, if people have a passionate interest in the subject, they will attend. And I remember a dear marketing colleague of mine, just after email started, we had CC mail and stuff that probably many people are too young to remember. But Alan was a hardcore old school direct mail advertising marketer. And he was in his office one day, having chewing the fat as you do, and talking about marketing. And he said to me, "I've got to show you this. Look at this email that's come in. These people seriously expect me to read an email of 2 pages and to get back to them. I'm not going to do it. If it was a physical letter on my desktop, then I would read it." Now, Alan was an Irishman and had a particular passion for all things Irish, including whiskey and Guinness. I said, "Alan, let me ask you a question. If an email came in and it was 10 pages long and it talked about a free Guinness tasting, would you read it?" He said, "I'd devour every single word." So the medium is important, but it's certainly not as important as the message. The message always trumps the medium in any market. There's the 3 M's. So we need to craft, before we even start talking about the size of the audience, we need to talk about getting the right audience. And that means we need to craft a message which does 2 things. First of all, it has to get through the reticular activating system. Now, this is a part in the brain which is designed to filter out irrelevancy and filter in relevancy. If the title of the webinar or any event sounds like it's something I've been there and I've done that, it's not going to get through the RAS, the reticular activating system. But assuming the title sounds like it might be different, and I'm not sure exactly what this is, and it does hold the potential for promise, then it gets through the reticular activating system and it hits the amygdala. And the amygdala's job is to figure out whether it's time to fight or flight or figure. And the figure out is, should I be interested in this or not? It's not just fight or flight, but it is an instant reaction. So when someone receives an email and said, "Hey, there's an event on webinar or otherwise, and this is the title." If the title doesn't get through the reticular activating system and it doesn't motivate the amygdala, it's not going to work. So you can have a benefit-rich title about business growth and leadership, and everyone's going, the RAS is going, blah, blah, blah. Heard it all before. Doesn't even get through. Delete, next email. Delete, next week. Oh, there's an interesting one. And the moment their eyes open and they start reading, we've got through the RAS and we've hit the amygdala, and the amygdala is going, this could be important to us. So there's a whole science behind doing that. And essentially what we need is a title that, yes, it needs to be benefit rich. It can't be centric around my product, my service, or me. It can't be I'm passionate about. It can't be I have a vision for. It can't be I care about, because that's all my stuff. It has to be benefit rich from the perspective of the prospect. Secondly, it must sound different to whatever your competitors are saying. We've got to craft a message which uses words that are different. Otherwise, it's not going to get through the RAS. And thirdly, it should contain specifics, because specifics, not only when it's done right, increase desirability, they increase believability. So if I talk about running webinars to get new clients, it's benefit rich. It's not particularly differentiated, and it doesn't contain any specifics. But if I talk about, come along and see how our clients in 151 cities around the world are generating a weekly flow of quality new client inquiries in less than 1 hour a month using webinars, it's got specifics and it's differentiated and it's benefit rich. So it gets the cut through and it gets the motivation we need.
Is there you mean, because obviously the title in this piece is critical to its success, because that's what you're going to be using to go out and try and attract this audience. Is there a particular framework that you like to use, so that, or a templated framework? Is that something that you would like to share with the audience? Because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, right? Is like, oh, well, okay, I've got to try and come up with something that's, a little bit snazzy, that meets all of these, that's specific, that's intriguing, et cetera, et cetera. But how do I craft that so that it's not, an arm's length long?
Absolutely, exactly. So there's three things, and I've mentioned them, but just to go 1, 2, 3, so it's a bit clearer. First of all, it needs to be benefit rich, and again, it needs to be benefit rich in the ears, if you like, or the eyes of the recipient. Secondly, it has to be phrased in such a way that's different to what the person has been hearing routinely, regularly, which means it's got to sound different to what your competitors are saying. And thirdly, it should contain specifics. And I'll give you before and after example, a couple of those just based on memory. So as a client, Maxtel Software provides point-of-sale software for fast food outlets, or quick service restaurants, as the industry calls themselves. So McDonald's, Burger King, and so on. So Max's events, prior to applying that formula of benefit rich, differentiated, and county specific, would say, come along to an event and we'll demonstrate our point-of-sale software for quick service restaurants. Didn't get a hell of a lot of interest. So we applied the formula and said, just a demonstration, because people like demonstrations. They don't particularly like training as much as they like sitting back and watching someone demonstrate something. So a demonstration. So come along and see how our clients are adding 50% to their sales and profitability in less than 90 days. PS. So adding now, actually, I think we made it 25%, because even though Max could promise 50%, people would not find it believable. And that comes back to the specifics. They need to be modest enough, enough to be attractive, but not so much that they're unbelievable. So it was 25% within 90 days guaranteed. So we've got in that title, by the way, demonstration of how our clients are adding 25% to their profits and sales within 90 days of guaranteed service. There's no mention of software. It could have been advertising. It could have been more car parks in the McDonald's car park. It could have been, the upsell question. It could have been signage. It could have been staff training. And the owners of those quick service restaurants really don't care, so long as they get the benefit. So that's
part of the intrigue, right? It's part of the intrigue. Is like, well, I wonder what that is. How are they doing that? What is this thing that they are doing?
And we can be a bit too cute with that, but you've hit another nail on the head, in that if we can invoke curiosity, that really can be very helpful. If it sounds too much like, I had someone approach me and say, look, I'm an international human resource recruiter. We've got an opportunity that we think would be perfect for you. Multi-level marketing, right? So am I curious? Not anymore, because it just sounds like I've heard that before. And that's not a knock with MLM. It's dressed up to be something it's really not. So that's a B2B example, but this works equally well in the consumer market. So Karen, another client, this one in Canada, Karen suffered terribly from anxiety, and she figured out how to get relief from it. So her life was so transformed by that she decided she was going to help other people suffering from anxiety. So as long as she was running events that talked about relief from anxiety, it wasn't getting cut through because it didn't contain the differentiation and the specifics. So what we did is we came up with a proprietary term for her, and we registered as a trademark. And top of my head, I can't remember, I'm sorry. But the registered trademark, we have Leadsology registered trademark. As soon as you register a name, it doesn't really matter if it's Acme Marketing or, Tom Weight Loss or whatever it is. But as long as it's got the registered trademark, people will quite rightly perceive what you have as differentiated. And suddenly you become the only name again. If someone wants Leadsology, we're really the only one in the world that has Leadsology. So whilst it helps to remove the untrue perception that we're the same as others. So let's get back to Karen. So how to swiftly progress from stressing to progressing in less than 30 days. So it was a simple 3-step model to shift from stressing to progressing, because people who have anxiety don't make progress. They feel crippled and they don't want to get out of bed. They don't want to check emails. They don't want to answer the phone. They just feel like they're on a raw edge of nervousness and fear and breakdown. So because they feel like they're paralyzed, this got cut through, shifting from stressing to progressing. And so there's a couple of examples of how we've taken a title which was probably benefit rich but lacked differentiation or specifics, and we've embedded those characteristics. Suddenly we're getting through the reticular activating system. We're motivating the amygdala to find out more.
So that framework for that would be, how to go from here to here. So whatever it is that they're struggling with to whatever it is that they actually want, and then giving a very specific time frame around it. And that's a really nice, simple way of being able to create this intriguing title.
Yeah, that's well summed up. And that from here to there worked well for Karen. Max, with the software, wouldn't need to do that. He just has to go, this is where you want to be. And he doesn't have to, in the presentation, you can talk about the problem that this solves. And that's where you can go to, the stressing and the staying in the bed and the not wanting to answer the phone and not wanting to answer the door. So that establishes what's called relatability. Karen knows where I'm at. My God, she's like a fly on the wall of my house. She can see me. And so that, having built the relatability, we can then transfer them from that point. Yes, she knows where I am. She's described my life. So if she knows that, she might also know the solution.
There's so much we can talk about with webinars. So I'm kind of like trying to decipher now, what is the stuff that we're really going to want to know. In terms of time frames, because back in the day, it was an hour. It could be in a 3-hour webinar. What is, if you come up with a sweet spot, what is the optimal time frame that a webinar should be?
It's probably around an hour. And the correct answer is as long as it takes to get the job done.
Yeah.
And then
I knew you were going to say that.
Right. So that's a good answer though, because I have, for example, financial planning clients who can run a really effective webinar in 25 minutes. I'm struggling to get mine under an hour and a quarter. And so naturally it's you often get a choice in marketing. So the choice is often around how much you want to filter out people out. So we understand a lot of marketing is around attracting, but in the process of attracting, we don't want to attract the wrong people. We want to filter out people who aren't ready or don't have the money, or we're talking about a commercial context. We want to help people who don't have money. We've got things to do that, in fact. But in terms of a webinar, we want to primarily attract people that have the money. The time is good for them to start or where they need. Now, if we run a 3-hour webinar, we're going to get less people registering for it, and we're going to get less people turning up. But you're going to get higher likelihood of sales, but less sales. So a lot of this depends on the price point that you're marketing your services at. The higher the price point, the longer you can afford to run the webinar, because you're attracting people who have a more serious interest. That put their hand up and said, yeah, look, I know it's 2 hours, but Jesus, I need a solution. I really need this. So they'll come to the 2-hour ones. If someone has a flirting or fleeting interest in potentially a $49 product, we're probably talking about a 10-minute webinar. So you've got to cut the time to the price and the need in the marketplace. There's also needs to be an alignment between the time it takes to deliver the solution. In my case, putting in place a marketing webinar system is going to take up to 90 days. If someone is not prepared to come to a 90-minute webinar, they're probably not going to be patient enough to implement for 90 days. So that's all about alignment. And what some people, it's just not possible, therefore, to say webinars should be at a certain defined length. But as a general rule of thumb, under an hour is probably the sweet spot. But it will vary depending on your value proposition, your price point, and the target market.
And I think you make a very valid point there too, Tom, is that, if somebody's not prepared to come to an hour webinar and you're talking to them about joining a program with you that might be a year long, then they're probably unlikely to be somebody that will turn up to the regular trainings to actually get the result. And you're going to end up with a bigger problem than, you're going to end up with a problem and they won't resolve theirs. So I think it's a really nice way of being able to filter out those that are serious and perhaps those that are not. In terms of so we're talking about a 60-minute, conversation, demonstration, teaching here. How much information should we actually be sharing in terms of, let's say it's a how-to type scenario. How much information should we be sharing and how much is too much?
Yeah, the old adage is you tell them what they need to do, but not how they need to do it. In order to find out how they need to do it, you've got to pay us some money. And I followed that principle of telling people what to do, but how to do it was you need to pay some money. I followed that for many years. But I ceased to believe in the validity of that, certainly in the context of my services. You have 3 segments turning up to webinars. There's the people who, the wanderers, they're just wandering around, no serious intention to buy. There are the explorers who have a serious intention to buy, but want 5 exposures to your brand before they buy. And then there's the seekers who could just give them the last slide, where do I buy? Because I'm already hooked, And so, there's around about 3% of the audience are going to be seekers. They just want, next step, please, tell me how to move forward. 12% are explorers, and the balance, 85% are wanderers. So I want to cater and give everyone something. Now, if they're the wanderers, they're not ready to buy. So I will still want to give them some value. I want to embed my brand in their brain until they are ready to buy. If they're explorers, the explorers need questions answered. The explorers need to go, I can see how that would work now. Not just that it does work, but they need to know that how it works, and they need to know I could make that work. So if you're going to convince the explorers that it's a good idea to move forward, you have to not just demonstrate that this thing works really well, you have to demonstrate how it works at a rational and logical level, and you have to demonstrate that they could make it work. So to that, and seekers don't need any of that. The seekers just trust you instantly, and they go, yep, you're the man, you're the woman, where do I buy? Bang, show me, walk me through, take me to the promised land. But the explorers are a significant chunk of the people that are potentially going to buy from you, and they need those questions answered. So what I do is I show them everything. I pull back the curtain. I show them exactly how we get audiences. I talk about the pitfalls. But before I seed this throughout the presentation, I make a deal with the audience essentially. I said, look, you've probably been to presentations where you walked away frustrated because you just don't feel like it was fully explained. I don't want to do that. But can we agree, please, that in exactly the same way that you have a specialty and people could understand what you do and how you do it, but still not execute it well, and so they need to hire you for that? It's the same. I'm going to show you everything you need to do. I'm going to show you how we work with our clients. I'll tell you about the pitfalls. But please understand, in order to make this work, you're going to have to pay some money. Now, if you're not ready to do that, you're still going to get a lot of value, and we'll help you as much as we can, whether you can afford us or not. But just bear that in mind. And when we go through before the call to action, I have one slide that says, here's why you should not do this yourself. And I unpack that a little bit more, how it took me as a full-time professional marketer 11 years to dial in the marketing governance. And I had a background in running events. I'd run over 500 marketing events. So if it took me 11 years as a full-time marketer to figure that out, I can help you bypass that 11 years. We can shrink it down to 90 days. So we're talking a little bit about that. So that's the caveat that I offer. If you're presenting to an audience, you can say to them, I'm going to share everything with you. I'm not going to hold anything back, because I want you walking away feeling good about our brand, feeling good that you've invested your time to come here. But please understand, it's a little bit like if I was on stage here and I had a combination safe and you could see me open the safe, click, 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 and boom, and there's all this gold inside. You go, oh, that's so easy. It is if you have the combination. But if you don't have the combination, it's pretty hard to get in.
Absolutely. And I love that, being able to come out and just share everything you possibly can, and that the audience, the intention is that that audience goes away, doesn't matter at what level they're at, whether they're a wanderer or they're ready to buy, they're a seeker,
Right.
they're actually going to get a whole lot of value through investing their time with you. It's a win-win, win-win situation. So in terms of that, now that we've sort of established, what do we put into this? And pulling back the curtain, sometimes someone like you who's had, been in this business for quite some time, it takes a long time to get to understand all the little intricacies of how this marketing machine works, and being able to pull back the curtain fully on something like that in 60 minutes. I mean, you're going for it, right? You're trying to give them as much information as you possibly can. But like you say, giving them that caveat that, hey, I'm going to do all of this. It's going to be hard and fast. You're going to be, drinking from the fire hose. And some of you are going to be able to walk away and implement this because you get it. Some of you, it's still going to be a bit like, whoa, but we're here to be able to help. And that it provides a really nice segue for people to be able to enter and start a professional relationship with you and your team. One of the questions I've got, I know you talk about, in your book and in some of your publications about this Hugh Jackman marketing. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what do you mean by that, and why should people avoid doing that? Like Hugh Jackman, by the way.
Pardon me?
I said I like Hugh Jackman, by the way. What is it that I'm intrigued?
Yeah, so Hugh Jackman marketing. It's really where people propose anything in business before they've established a relationship. And it's a story. It's a true story. I was in the kitchen having a coffee with my wife. We were sitting around one morning having a chat, and I had a brain sneeze. This explosion in the brain. Afterwards you think, why did I do that? And I asked her. I said, who do you think is the world's most irresistible man? And she, looked at me and said, well, of course you are, Tom. And I said, yeah, bald wrinkles, top belly. Who can't go for that, right? I mean, I said, no, come on. So I sort of teased it out of her, and she came up with Roger Federer and I don't know, who's the Nespresso guy, George Clooney, but I wasn't seeing any spark. And I said, come on, there's someone else, because I'm not seeing your eyes light up. And she go, oh, I know. And she sort of sat bolt upright and her eyes popped out of her head. And she said, oh, I know, it's Hugh Jackman. And, Hugh Jackman, if you don't know him, he's got a body Adonis would die for. He can sing, he can dance, he's a philanthropist, he's an environmentalist, he can act. He's just probably the world's most complete man. So I had another brain sneeze, and I said, okay, so you're saying Hugh Jackman would be the world's most irresistible man, as in you can't resist, right? The most. She said, yeah, I think so. I said, okay, well, what would happen if there was a...
Oh, we just lost your audio, Tom.
Back again?
Hang on. Back now. Yep, you're good.
Okay, so I'm asking you, I said to my wife, so what if Hugh Jackman's the world's most irresistible man? If there's a knock at the front door right now and you put your coffee down, you went open to answer it, and you answered the door and it was Hugh Jackman standing in front of you, And he said to you, look, you don't know me, but my name is Hugh Jackman. Would you make me the happiest man on earth? Would you run away with me right now? Don't pack a suitcase. I have the limousine waiting. I have the private jet. I have the condo in New York and Riviera. We can, if Hugh Jackman proposed to you right now, what would you say? And she looked at me with those, eyes, and she said, well, sort of like a sympathetic pity look, well, I love you, right? I said, yeah, and I think I know what you're going to say next. And she said, well, I'd run away with the guy because it's Hugh Jackman. I'm sorry, but it's Hugh Jackman. And I put my coffee down and, wiped a tear out of the corner of my eye. And I said, you don't need to apologize. She said, I just told you I'd run away with another man. I said, yeah, but it's Hugh freaking Jackman. I mean, if there was a knock at the front door and me, Tom, I swung the door open, it was Hugh Jackman who proposed to me, I would run away, and I'm not even gay. It's Hugh Jackman. And funny little story, true story, but it really sums up what a lot of people do when they go to a business networking meeting and hand out a business card and say, would you like to talk about SEO services? Do you need a new website? I'm a management consultant, with the context or the subtext being, should we talk about doing business together? So Hugh Jackman marketing is a mistake that people make when they propose, not marriage, but they propose anything about a business conversation prior to establishing a relationship. He said, right at the start, most of us need a first date. So if, Hugh Jackman can get away with it, I can't for some reason. If I knocked on the neighbor's door and proposed marriage, I don't think I'd get very far. So the webinar is the perfect first date because it's not too much skin in the game, but it's not too little. It's more than a speed date, metaphorically speaking, where you get to sit in front of him for 6 minutes. It's an hour we're going to spend together. So it's asking people to put enough skin in the game. And that concept of skin in the game is really, really important to marketing. As I said before, if it was like a 10-minute webinar, it's not enough skin in the game to register someone that could be seriously interested in a multi-$1,000 product. If it's come away to a 1-month retreat with me and pay $10,000, well, that's too much skin in the game. So we have to figure out the right skin in the game for the person, whether they're a wanderer, an explorer, or a seeker. And the 1-hour webinar is pretty much about the right skin in the game. They don't have to drive anywhere. They don't have to fly anywhere. They don't have to go security. They don't have to wear a mask. They can just sit at home in front of the laptop and they can be there on their first date with me.
So now that that's a great analogy in that sense, and being able to create and build a relationship with someone over a relatively short period of time, but it's intimate enough that people are going to want to at least know more and continue the relationship. So now that we've talked about and we've established that, hey, webinars are here, they're not going away, they're actually as strong as they've ever been. Have there been any changes in the way in which you market or you advertise and find your wanderer, your explorer, your seeker, to get them to be interested in registering to come to your webinar?
Right. So in terms of principle, no, but in terms of execution, yes. So the principle, I can sum it up by the quick story about the 100 sleeping bears. So imagine a forest, there's 100 bears in the forest and they're all asleep. And we have some honey, and we want the bears to eat our honey being a metaphor for our product or service, the bears being a metaphor for suspects, not being prospects. But somehow we know that 3 out of the 100 sleeping bears are actually sleeping on an empty stomach and they're hungry and they want our honey. When you think about how do we find those 3 that are hungry, these are the genuine prospects amongst the sea of suspects. We can go running through the forest with a sharp stick and find a bear, poke it in the bum with a sharp stick, wake it up, and wave a honey pot in front of their nose. And if we're lucky, and it's one of the 3% that actually wants our honey, then they will probably eat our honey and not us. If we're not so lucky, and it's one of the 97 that just wanted to sleep and they're just seriously angry that they got woken up, then we better be a good runner. And that approach is like cold calling. It's like proposing to people at a trade show or conference or a business networking meeting that we have no idea if they have any interest in our service, our product, our honey whatsoever. The webinar approach is very different. It puts the honeypot outside the forest, in the knowledge that the hungry bears, the three that are hungry, will probably start dreaming of honey, swimming in honey or something, but then they'll wake up and go, oh, I can still smell the honey. It wasn't just a dream. So the three hungry bears come out of the forest to sample honey. And that honeypot is the title of the webinar that we talked about before. The title is got to exclude the 97% that aren't ready to buy, and it's got to attract 3% that are ready to buy. So the forest of the 100 bears is someone else's email list. So most people who do business like me have some sort of email list, whether it's 20 people or 20,000 people. They've got an email list of people who are interested in kind of what we do. There's a very important switch that I needed to make, and we're talking about things that have changed in terms of how we go about generating audiences or presenting to them. The big switch for me, the big breakthrough for me came when I realized that it was far more profitable to market other people's quality content to my list than it was to think of my list as being a prospect base for my products or services. So most of us built an email list around the idea that if we get a big enough email list, people will buy stuff from us. One email list, they don't want to hear from me about my offers more than once every 90 days. Rough rule of thumb, it's a pretty good one. That means I can market my stuff, like come along to my webinar or go ahead and buy my book, a lead magnet of some sort, to flush out the three hungry bears out of the 100. I can do that once every 90 days. That's 4 opportunities a year before I start getting people going, kind of over it, Tom. So if I use that same list to promote free, high-quality content, other people's honeypots, twice a week, 50 weeks a year, in exchange for them marketing my webinar, I now have access to 100 email lists versus 1. That multiplying factor is an absolute game changer. So what I teach my clients is the purpose of growing your email list, which is critical, is to market other people's stuff too, not your stuff.
That is a huge shift in mindset and the way in which most people think about it, right? Like you said, most think about, I'm going to do this, I'm going to create my own email list for my benefit in the long term. I'm just going to use that to keep, most cases, recreating or creating new products that I can now go out and sell to my audience. But what you're saying here is I'm going to create this, or I'm going to create myself a pool, my own forest with the, people, seekers, wanderers and explorers in it. And then I'm going to go and find other people who have products and services that the audience that I have now gathered would be interested in. And I'm going to provide that value to them on the regular, and vice versa.
And it's just the honeypot we're offering. We're offering other people's honeypots. So it's a free webinar, it's a free book, it's a free 5-hour challenge. We're not promoting other people's paid services or products. And that's an important distinction. So we're essentially curating high quality free content, and we're offering that to our subscriber list. So we send a lot of emails out. I guess we send on average about 6 a week. So people who don't like that value proposition will unsubscribe pretty quickly. And the majority of our new subscribers unsubscribe within 60 days. And that's fine, because unless they're happy with our strategy and perceive that they will gain value from our strategy, there's no point in having them on our email list. And there's, the email list at the end of the day serves a purpose, a commercial purpose. And if people aren't comfortable with that value proposition, so what we do is when someone registers for a webinar from someone else's email list, which is how vast majority of our webinar registrants come through, is from someone else's email list, not social media, by the way, but we might circle back to that, is they get an email straight off the bat that says, hey, thanks for registering. You're now in our email list. Please, if you're not happy with that, just click here, unsubscribe. You'll still get the webinar registration stuff, but there's no problem. If, however, you would like to receive carefully curated, completely free, but high value content from our partners, then you can expect to receive a handful of emails every week with those offers. These are not affiliate-based offers. These are just people we think has some cool stuff that might help you. Maybe stay subscribed, see what you think. So we're very transparent about what's going to happen and when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. And we're really comfortable if people aren't happy with that, they can just unsubscribe. It's all top of the fold, very easy to do.
And, so and I think that's important too, Tom, is that you're being very upfront, honest, and you are, being transparent with the intentions here right from the get-go, and allowing people to opt out if that's like, I'm not sure how I ended up in here, or I came here, but that wasn't what I was expecting.
The transparency is really important up front. And for example, we promote our webinars as demonstration, not as free training sessions. So people know they're coming along to a demonstration of how I work with my clients in 151 cities around the world to, benefit. And I think, when people subscribe to an email list, transparency. Everything we do, we want it to be transparent. We're happy to share numbers with everyone, the good, the bad, the ugly. Because you have to, it's a reasonable question for a prospect to ask, if there was any form of bait and switch, if there was anything that was less than honest and open, before I pay you some money, is it likely to change after that transaction has been completed? It's like all the people that thought that Donald Trump would suddenly start behaving presidentially once he became president. It was, love him or hate him, and he tends to divide opinion. And I'm going to share my opinion because it's not relevant to the context. But he wasn't going to change. And if there's a lack of transparency, it's unlikely that's going to get any better after the money's changed hands. So I think it's really important to have a level of transparency, not just for, reasons of karma, if you like, but for commercial reasons as well. You just want to build a brand that people can trust.
Absolutely important. Now, you touched on this, and I think you were going to go there, is, why have you chosen to go down this path and not use traditional social media? Like a lot of people would say, create a Facebook ad, or, jump on TikTok and start doing something on there to attract your audience. I mean, why are those places not places that you would recommend your clients go to at this point?
So I ran Facebook ads for many years. So we had always a parallel country with always split testing, 2 ads. You kill off the one that wasn't performing as well, replace it with another one. 2 landing pages, 2 offers, 2 tripwires, series of tripwires or autoresponders, 2 lots of downsells, upsells, side sells, et cetera, et cetera. So, a team of people working on those. And at the start, which was probably around 2009, we could get a webinar registrant for $1. That was what it cost us to get a webinar registrant. But less than 10% of them would turn up, versus 40% back then that would turn up if they came from someone else's email list. That cost went from $1 to $12. So I got out at $12 because it was no longer profitable. The problem with Facebook, and we talked about this before, is a couple of problems. In order to validate the quality of the forest with the sleeping bears, we have to know why why the bears are in the forest. So to make that less opaque, why have people gone to Facebook? Why have they gone to LinkedIn? Why have they subscribed to an email list? Now, the reason why they're there is fundamentally impacts on their likelihood to buy your product or service. Like, people don't go to Facebook with the intention of registering for a webinar, or with an intention for learning more about what you or I do, unless it's some social service we're offering. They're there to showcase themselves, perhaps, to find out what their grandkids have got up to on the weekend.
Yes, your audio's gone, Tom.
Some got muted again for some reason. Versus the reason why someone joins an email list. Let's say one of our partners has sales training. So someone joining their email list to find out more about sales is a reason why they are likely to buy from us, much closer to than someone who went to Facebook to catch up on the grandkids' kids' birthdays. So the reason people are there is really important. And also, there's this concept called, I call it the wheelhouse. This forest of 100 bears, be it that in Facebook or on LinkedIn or someone else's email list, the reason they're there has to be aligned to something that's similar to what I've offered. So let's say even an email list. Let's say someone's got, let's say Karen, who's in Canada, I mentioned her before, has got, let's say she has a list of 10,000 people who are interested in personal development. More specifically, they are interested in relief from anxiety. 10,000 size email list. The offer is around personal development. So she could email her list with 2 emails promoting my webinar, and we'd probably get 0 response. So it's not even just having an email list. That email list has to have been procured. It has to be grown with people who have an interest in the subject matter that's close to what I want them to have an interest in.
Mm-hmm.
So social media is problematic because, and we do social media. I pulled out of Facebook because I consider they're an organization that don't reflect our value set. We want to put people before profits, understanding that profit will follow. People want to stay on Facebook, God bless them, fully respectful of their right to do that. So it's not a judgment on anyone else. It's just our personal business decision. So other than Facebook, we're on social media. We've done TikTok campaigns. We tweet, we post on LinkedIn, not that LinkedIn's specifically social media. So we do that with the purpose, A, of helping people to understand that we're up to the play. We're not just some fuddy-duddy dinosaur organization that doesn't understand social media. And B, because it's not bad to keep my brand in people's brain until they are ready to buy. But the buying mechanism is the webinar, or it's someone reading one of my books and then making an inquiry. Social media is too much like 2-minute speed dating. People just aren't putting enough skin in the game to suggest that they have a serious interest. Facebook ads is even worse. Facebook ads, because you pay for them. And what Zuckerberg and Meta have done so cleverly is they've got you in an auction, a bidding war against your competitors. So you are bidding against your competitors. It's like having 2 gladiators in the ring, and let's see which one is most prepared to bleed the most. And our colleagues that are spending $60,000 and $70,000 a month on Facebook ads still are slowly painting themselves into a corner because they've got dependent on extremely poor quality leads from Facebook, and they're paying now exorbitant amounts of money for those poor quality leads, but they don't have another marketing system, so they feel trapped. Facebook ads for the marketing of coaching, consulting style services is just pretty much the worst thing you could do.
And this really does lend itself, right? I mean, you're talking about the likes of Facebook, and as you know, for those that are have become very heavily reliant on utilizing a platform such as Facebook to try and generate, as you say, poor quality leads, is that they're at the whim and the mercy of Facebook. You know, they change their algorithm, they change the rules, or they put you in Facebook jail, and you know, there's not a lot you can do about it. And you touched on this, and I think you called it the big switch, and that's a terminology that I use too, in terms of switching people and taking them and getting them onto a database or onto an email list that you actually own and you have the control over, and you're no longer at the mercy of, you know, another organization that dictates to you who you can reach, when you can reach them, and how much it's going to cost you to do so. So I think that's 100%. A really important point.
And so another analogy we can give folks around Facebook ads is, you know, any gold rush, but let's take 1849 in California. We know that the people who lost the money were the people digging for gold. We know that the people who made the money were selling axes and everything else. I'm back. I don't know why it comes and goes. But so today, the gold rush is things like Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, automated messaging platforms, and so on. The people that are making the money today in marketing are selling you the tools and the platforms. Poor schmucks who are doing the advertising are just losing money. So the vast majority of people in gold rushes go home more broke than they were when they got there, other than the people selling the tools. It's the same today in the digital world. If you're buying the tools or you're renting the tools, the people are making the money are the ones that are doing the renting and the selling. It's unlikely that you'll strike gold. Sorry. Whereas
look, I know.
if you get your audience, get your email list growing through other people's email lists, it's completely free, and they're high quality prospects. There is light and day between the two, chalk and cheese, and one you're paying for and it's not working, and the other one you're not paying for and it does work.
So I think what we've established today is, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, that, webinars, they're still around, they're still going strong, and they're still a very successful marketing strategy to use. So that's number one. The second piece of this, which I think is the little gem in the conversation, is kind of how to go about this. How do we attract people to our offer, which is come and allow me to share my expertise with you through a demonstration or through some form of training, through a webinar, but actually using other people's lists in terms of being able to offer that service to an audience that really is up the food chain. So, and when I talk about the food chain, I'm talking about, wanderers at the bottom, the next one being explorers, the next being seekers.
Right.
I mean, you're essentially being able to cut out a lot of the wanderers by going directly to an audience that's already been curated by somebody else, and being able to offer to add additional value to their audiences. So I think this is a brilliant way to be able to meld those two things together. And it's interesting because if you think back, these strategies have been around for a very, very, very long time. And often we forget, right? We forget that, gosh, the old things that have been around a long time don't always go out of fashion. They are tried and true, and they're there, they're there for the long haul. Whereas something new and fancy and shiny, we can go there for a short period of time, but it tends to lose its shine after a while.
To reinforce the point you've just made, which is on the money again, you think about the oldest, most effective marketing method in the world. It was speaking to groups of people. And if anyone has any doubt about that, you should just ask yourself how many clients Christ, Buddha, and Muhammad have. Because it's billions. And all those three dudes did was speak to groups of people. None of them wrote anything that we're aware of. And mostly there were small groups of people. So what webinars give us is the facility to speak to large groups of people in diverse locations around the world. We run our webinar day, we would typically have people from 12, 24, sometimes 3 different countries. And I find that really cool.
Absolutely. I mean, this sort of format too, you and I speaking and talking about this sort of stuff. I mean, it's in the similar vein, right? It is being able to speak, share our expertise, and have this information go out to groups, a large group of people, an infinite group of people, over a long period of time, because the way in which it's been. But it's the same thing. It's essentially sharing and speaking your knowledge, and allowing other people to have access to that. So I think, this whole concept around webinars, I think if you're sitting on the fence, or you've been like kind of thinking, gosh, I want to do it, I'm not really sure how, I want to give you a couple of things, because I know Tom has got he's written a couple of books on this. We want to let you know where they can go to get a copy of the book. So where's the best place for our listeners to go, Tom, to get their hands on the couple of books that you've written?
Well, of course, they can go to Amazon. There's a Kindle version there. There's an Audible version. There's the paperback version. If you are comfortable with the PDF, you can go to gettomsfreebook.com, and you can get a PDF copy there. Gettomsfreebook.com. So it just depends which format you want. We keep the price $12 for a 12. There we go. $12, I think, US for the paperback. So yeah, Amazon, Audible, or gettomsfreebook.com.
All right, there you go, guys. So I've just popped that on the bottom of the screen there, gettomsfreebook.com. So if you want a copy of that book, go and get it for free. Head on over to gettomsfreebook.com. And of course, if you feel inclined, you like what Tom's had to say today, then of course you'll be able to find more information about Tom on that website, and enter his email marketing list. And if you want to keep up to date with very curated information, then that's the place to join. But I want to say thank thank you very, very much for your wisdom, your knowledge, your sharing of information today. It's been fantastic. And I think those that have been, that will have listened to today's episode, if they were sitting on the fence about webinars, they certainly will be on the other side of the fence now thinking, okay, I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to do it. And like Tom said, if you need a little bit more of a hand, you absolutely can reach out to him. And I'm sure Tom and his team would be happy to hold your hand and guide you through the process and help you to, really collapse that learning curve. So thanks very much, Tom.
Thanks, Tracy. It's been a privilege to be here. Thanks for the invite.
You're most welcome. All right, everybody else, thank you very much for joining us on the Unlock Show today. As you know, we share all sorts of things when it comes to unlocking your success across your business, your family, and your life. And I'm going to be back again with another great guest on Friday. So 10 a.m. both Wednesdays and Fridays, Brisbane time is when we go live. If you've got any questions whatsoever, head on over to Success Secrets for Business, Family, and Life. You'll find us on Facebook. You will find this episode along with a whole bunch more episodes and a whole lot of other shows that have been carefully curated by my team and myself. And you will be able to ask any questions in the chat underneath each of those shows. So we hope to see you inside of that group sometime soon. But until Friday, I hope you guys are having a fantastic week and go and live your life unlocked, because as you know, there is just no other way. All right, guys, see ya.